So I've invited Molly to share her story today because what we say is encountering Jesus changes everything. And I just want Molly to share her story of encountering Jesus and how that's changed everything. So welcome, Molly. You're really welcome.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
And maybe just start by telling us just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Molly. I'm originally from South Africa. I left South Africa when I was 18 years old and moved to London. I was there for about 5 years and then working with children in Montessori school and also nannying and helping new mums with their newborn babies when they first come home from hospital. I then moved to Spain and was in Spain for 2 years and then came to Ireland in 2008. Yeah, I'm a mum of two beautiful children. I have Taylor, who is 10 years old, and Cody, who's 8.
I know from your background, you've kind of always been interested in spirituality.
I have, yes. My grandmother, she was involved in automatic writing, so she wrote a book called Letters from Mother. And as a child, I was very fascinated in this book, interested in it. Didn't really read it as a child, but as a teenager I did, and definitely as an adult. So I didn't grow up in a Christian household at all. So I did obviously know about God, and there were people speaking about God and knew about it, but it wasn't encouraged or brought up with it in my family background at all. But definitely was always seeking for answers and looking deeper, very interested in psychology and how people work, and knowing that there's something more in the world, that kind of there's a lot more in the unseen than the seen, and I was always interested in that.
And then you got involved in Reiki and different types of training like that.
I went into Reiki after my relationship. My husband and I separated. I was seeking healing, and I knew I had to be really strong for my children, and it was more to do with my own personal healing that I turned to Reiki and Japa meditation, and also a lot of, I suppose, in those uncertain times when a relationship breaks down, when it's kind of a shock to your life, it's not what you expected, kind of all the dream. My dream always as a young child was to be a mum. That was just, I knew I always wanted to be a mother and to be with a family and married and all that kind of thing. That was my dream. So that completely shattered without any, it was just a huge shock. So yeah, I went into a lot of fortune telling and angel card readings and shamanic healing and lots of things that I wasn't even aware of, didn't even know these things existed. It made me feel confident. It made me feel feel like I could handle and cope with what I was going through. So yeah, I got very involved with that and did the full Reiki training, more so for myself, but continued in the different levels until they call it being a Reiki master. And that just basically means that you've been attuned to the Reiki healing so that you can actually give healing to other people and not just use it as self-healing.
How did you become aware of Jesus, or who came into your life to bring Jesus into your life?
Yeah, so soon after my separation in my relationship, I met another South African girl, Adele, who was in the church, and she was also having a similar situation to me, but she was coping with it through her church and her religion and her relationship with God. And so when we met, I was fine that she was like that, but I was like, okay, I'm not into that at all because of my situation from a child. I'd completely, kind of turned off of Christianity and things like that. She knew kind of not to talk to me really about God or anything like that, or invite me to church or anything, because I was very strong in my new beliefs and the way that I was handling things with my new age healing practices and things like that. So I felt like, no, I'm fine. This is what I do. And, we just agreed that she does that to help and I do this. And that was great. We were a friendship for a long time. It was 4 years before I even, began to even listen to what she was saying or what her beliefs were, or allowing her to pray for me. So in 2018, it was a very difficult year. I started feeling a lot of anxiety again, and It got to a point where I couldn't see clients anymore. So the anxiety just increased over the year of 2018. And in November, the end of November, I thought, okay, well, I had stopped actually practicing the japa meditation, and I thought, okay, maybe I need to go back to doing that. So I went back to that, and I was there probably 2 weeks, and it still wasn't fulfilling me the way that it did before, or helping me the way that it used to. And one of the weeks when I was there, they started doing a mantra that I'd never heard before, because the japa meditation is all about mantras. So you do a lot of Hindu mantras and all sorts of different mantras that you repeat. So you don't even know what you're saying. You're just repeating all these weird words and things. Then they started doing a mantra about Jesus, will you recognize me when I come into your kingdom? Or when you come into my kingdom, something like that. And I was like, I just couldn't repeat those words. I just started crying and felt really emotional and not able to join in the group mantraing these.
So just when they started, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom, something started happening.
Yeah, exactly. And it was almost like I just felt, well, no, he's not going to recognize me. So it was very powerful words. Like, it was like, well, he wouldn't recognize me but I didn't know what that even meant yet, because I didn't know about having a relationship with Jesus or anything. But now looking back, I see that that's what probably made me cry, that realization. And so anyway, again, I went home thinking, what was that all about? I have no idea. And Adele came over to visit, and she's offered, can I pray for you? So I was like, sure, no problem. I thought that she would go home and pray. Like, I didn't know that people pray out loud over people. So I thought that, if I could pray. And she was like, okay, well, if you just sit there, do you mind if I put my hand on your shoulder? I was like, oh, what do you mean? She was like, no, well, I'm going to pray for you. I was like, oh, okay, this is strange. But I was like, all right. So she, put her hand on my shoulder and she started praying. And again, I had that same sensation that I'd had in the Japa group, and again began to cry. But yet, through her words, as she kept on praying, I just felt this amazing sense of peace and clarity. And although I was crying, it wasn't a painful cry. It was kind of like a release. And so that feeling lasted for the day and maybe into the next day. But again, it kept coming back. And when a client booked for a Reiki treatment, it kept being really severe. So since then, Adele said, oh, why don't you just come to the Christmas service? It's very laid back in our church. They just do a play on stage and, sing a song, and then you have tea and coffee and chats, and it's very, nice, just celebrating Christmas. So I thought, okay, I'd go to that, which was huge because she had invited me before, but went to the service. And ever since that service, I've been going every week since then, and ended up being baptized in April 2019. And it's just been a whole journey. I think, when you encounter Jesus, your life definitely does change in every area. It changes. And I no longer practice Reiki, not, just that it was my own. One day I was at home and I just needed to go into the cabin. I have a cabin where I do the treatments, and I just got rid of all the crystal healing books and the crystals and my Reiki certificates and everything to do with what was so much ingrained in my identity, because I was very much that was giving me my strength. My different crystals had different meanings or different powers or things. That this one would give you confidence, this one would give you clarity, this one would kind of protect from negative energies. And that was what got me through every day. It was like, okay, I've got that on, I'm confident in that, and saging my house with sage and having mantras playing constantly on the radio. So all of that was gone, and it was just all in a pile. And I was like, what am I going to do? What do I do with all this stuff? So I just closed the door, because I was like, I didn't know what was going on, but yet I felt just a release, a very peaceful feeling. I felt freedom. And then again, like just slowly over the weeks, I bought a Bible, and I said to Adele, I'm not going to, tell the children about this. And even though I know they're going to think, why are the Buddhas going and the different statues and things from the home? Funny enough, they didn't actually notice until 3 or 4 weeks later. But again, I'd said, I'm not going to bring them to church because I'm not too sure what this is about yet. but I just found myself doing it. They just came to church, and I was reading them Bible stories in the evenings, and you just had to trust. You didn't know where. I didn't know where I was stepping or where I was going, but there was something that was just leading me, I guess, and leading each step. But it was very unknown, and it was very uncertain, and I didn't know who I was, and I couldn't explain myself to friends or family because it was something that I never ever imagined. And now I can finally wear a cross, but I struggled to wear a cross. I would often take it off, or I'd hide it under my top, or if I was playing Spirit radio in the house, if people came over to visit, I would switch the radio off, and it wasn't easy for me to identify as a Christian.
I just really struck by when you said that at that first mantra, how would he recognize me? Like, how would he? But actually, he really did. He's always known you. He's made you for him. And I was just wondering if you were to, because there may be some people listening that are a little bit on the same journey that you were on, and might wonder, like, how could Jesus recognize me? And you're saying encountering Jesus changes everything. What might you say to those people that might have the same confusion, the same thing about Jesus recognizing them?
I just think just keep going, just keep taking those steps, because it does ease the confusion and the feelings of not knowing who you are or where you're going. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it does get easier. But also, even in the steps of taking that journey, in the difficult steps, even though they're difficult, you still feel like you have some sort of strength around you, which is obviously Jesus with you. Keep taking those steps and keep practicing different things of any feelings that you're getting of obedience to Christ. I mean, for instance, one thing that was what people in today's age found very extreme and weird was my boyfriend and I had actually been living together for 2 years, and both of us felt, because he had a similar journey at the same time. I mean, he has been a lot more Christian background than myself. He has 4 children, I have 2 children. And we thought, we're taking them to church, we're teaching them about God and about what it says in the Bible, but we're living together and we're not married. And so we made the decision to live separately, and that a lot of my friends and people thought, you don't have to do that just because you're a Christian, and you don't. I'm not saying you do, but it felt like God was telling us, to do that. So just follow those, whether it's instructions or feelings or thoughts, because when you do it, it was amazing how God opened up all the ways. We didn't know how, like the rental market in Ireland is crazy. And we didn't know how, Seth was going to find a place to live, but everything was taken care of by God. So when you make a decision that is in God's will for your life, everything runs smoothly. And we were amazed at even tiny things that happened that were just little confirmations that this is the right thing. And when you do things the way that God teaches and says in the Bible, how it does change your life, and the way you feel, that the kind of freedom and peace, feel very peaceful. It feels like life works better, than doing it your own way. And all my life I've done it my own way, and I've seen what happens that way, and I'm trying now to do it God's way and see what happens this way.
That's why encountering Jesus changes everything. Molly, thank you so much for sharing your story. Just really, really encouraging.
Thank you very much, Seán. Thank you for having me.